There is a severe shortage and disruption in the supply of life energy necessary to sustain a living consciousness within man, he and she, a global energy crisis. High Priest Kwatamani speaks on the misappropriation of sexual energy within and among man, he and she. High Priest Kwatamani, Supreme Soothsayer, Soul Seer, Spiritual Healer and Revealer, Chief Elder of the Kwatamani First Genesis Tribe, the oldest, longest sustained, raw and living, plant fuel consuming, family community order known over half a century and still going strong.
You caught out deep in some very serious meditation, working to figure out what would be the most significant subject matter that the I and I could bring to the table today in the midst of serious earth-shifting crisis, serious family crisis, serious interrelationship problems, he and she, in fact, a serious state of crisis that shows very clearly that unless a few of the few can urgently get a sense of order within family community networks, we don't have any alternative but to continue a downward spiral into oblivious nothingness. And as I've said over and over and over again, failure is not an option, and therefore we cannot go that direction. Yeah, and I was on a focus, had just finished a critical game. We had just pulled off a beautiful victory that left the team undefeated going into the playoffs. While the I and I was coaching, I heard this young man in the stands, and he was having fits. I mean, the brother had lost it. I could not figure out what his problem was. So I said, "What's the problem, man? What happened?" And he said, excuse me, High Priest. I mean, I know that you're in a whole different place. If you could see what I'm seeing.
His eyes televised what he had in mind, programmed to see another lustful crime.
I am so serious. And it was a bunch of them sitting, and they were tripping out like something was wrong. Came to find out that these young brothers, very athletically inclined, were focused on a young sister going over to the other side of the stands, climbing up the steps to sit down and watch.
Caught her eyes in a sideways glance, turned into a deep-seated trance. Said it was love at first sight. Loved the way her dress fit just right, skin tight.
They were saying, goodness gracious, now she's built. Man, what I would give to get a hold of that.
Yeah, he loved to imagine her naked body moving and grooving in the heat of the night.
And it was like frightening. I turned, I looked at the young man. I tried to reason with him. And why are the group of them freaking out like they're freaking out?
A hard-on could make a man lose all his sense, get real intense.
The young man simply said, if you could see what these eyes see.
Looking from the backside, rocking with a rhythm and stride. Firm breast and thighs made his nature rise.
In simple terms, what he said his eyes were seeing.
His eyes televised what he had in mind, programmed to see another lustful crime. Caught her eyes in a sideways glance, turned into a deep-seated trance. Said it was love at first sight. Loved the way her dress fit just right, skin tight. Yeah, he loved to imagine her naked body moving and grooving in the heat of the night. Looking from the backside, rocking with a rhythm and stride. Firm breast and thighs made his nature rise. Fluffy lips, thick, shapely hips, dreamy eyes. He was in love with his own fantasized pornographic vibe.
Just sitting and reasoning. reasoning with those young men in such a hype state. So this made it very clear to I that the most important subject that we could discuss is the misappropriation of sexual energy within and among man, he and she. We cannot exist upon the planet without the binding, the combining, the unifying vibration of sexual energies, he and she. Yet it has become so critically misused and abused that it has become a catalyst to a nature energy that is fueling conflict, confusion, and chaos, division, strife, violence, hostile aggression. As a matter of fact, it is defined by sexual violation, violence, war, and crime. Something so basic and so simple to our existence, yet so critical to the destruction of family community order. What I reason with is, so many do not even comprehend sexuality. They don't comprehend that there is actually different kinds of sense, different kinds of movements of the body that actually tell the other sex that I'm calling for it. It doesn't matter if it's he or she, but then there are certain kinds of body movements that has been programmed, orchestrated, manipulated to draw attention from the other sex, having nothing to do with where the natural and innate state of being of that person may be. And this is what's causing a tremendous amount of problems. You'll notice that the predator, the males roam around nomadically, seeking out that's male of the feminine she. And that she's walking around trying to find ways and means to be had. Now that predatory nature has been transmitted into man, he and she. Although we are not instinctually, naturally, innately of a predatory nature. We are entirely different. We're communal by nature. Therefore, the most essential element of our existence as man, he and she is family communal order. Since we are not instinctually predators, since we're not instinctually nomadic, only becoming nomadic when a hunting, herding, warring tribe has invaded and intruded and split the family up so much that the person now is roaming around trying to find a sense of communal order, belonging over a period of time, losing one's instinctual reasonings. However, all it takes is for that instinctual reasoning to be reinforced. That being can pick up those traits again. Now, of course, if it's over a long and extended period of time, it's going to take a long and extended period of reinforcement. If we have come to be trained, conditioned, programmed within a social disorder that actually has within its master scheme to divide, conquer, separate, so as to rule over those populations, then that social disorder, which is called a social order, will strategize how to misuse or misappropriate sexual energies. And it has happened so precisely. As the eye and I look around, what I see is that the feminine, she's lost touch with her feminine essence. She's forgotten that she's so essential to the existence of man, he and she, since she is the birthplace of who we be. And since her womb is the first classroom, the first communal order, it is essential that not only she, but that he, the masculine energy, know that to guide and protect and to uphold and maintain her feminine dignity will, in fact, be the most important mission in his life. But as I said, that has been bent and broken, ripped and torn apart, divided, conquered, separated, so as to rule over those populations.
In this final hour, divided and filled with contempt, any attempt to reconcile this love-hate syndrome must begin in a broken home. A divided house cannot stand, and this is just the way it was planned.
I remember coming in at a later time and communicating with some of the young men during the tournament that we were having, the Go Green tournament. And I asked them, do you know anything about the paper bulls that were issued by the Roman Pope, giving the authority of Spain and Portugal and those of their authority to feel high and mighty about forcing populations to worship their ideology? I mean, we're talking about a warlord culture, and a warlord culture and how it would manifest, and its purpose and focus to control the populations and to make sure that the male fall under the order of their domain, and that the female become a breeder of the order of their domain. These youth had no idea as to what they and I was talking about. No, they were educated. Some had went to the university. Some had been traveling, went to other schooling facilities. It became very clear that they could not know what the I and I am talking about unless there was a full purpose and working to get a greater comprehension of where we are at this particular point in time. You see, if we do not know the circumstances that has put us in a bind, we cannot possibly bond into a oneness so long as those circumstances still stand in between us, separating, dividing the essence of who we be as children of the sun, as man, he, and she.
Quote, the Dum Divarsis is a papal bull, a special decree by the Pope issued by Pope Nicholas V in 1452. It states, we grant you by these present documents with our apostolic authority full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, duchies, counties, principalities, and other property, and to reduce their persons into perpetual slavery. Page 230. Taken from the prophetic 12,594 year Banu cycle, encoding the consciousness of higher peace through the divine union of masculine and feminine energy, Book 1 by High Priest Kwatamani. Copyright November 11, 2011, 11/11/11.
Certain particular circumstances has happened. The Pope, for example, issued paper bulls. He gave the authority of the Spanish, the Portuguese, and those of their domain, the right from their God, their Christ, to go upon the lands and enslave and take those populations, everything they have, all their wealth, all their worldly goods, everything else, and do with them as they please, because it was the will of their deity. Now, obviously, we got to get some sense, because we've learned to assimilate, integrate, and adopt that particular mindset. We have to get some sense. The sense is, are we talking about the Prince of Peace, or are we talking about a manifestation of an image used to abuse populations and then to make them feel that it's under righteous terms and conditions.
What was the requiremento, the requirement? Quote, I certify to you that with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can, and shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their highnesses. We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them, and as such shall sell and dispose of them as their highnesses may command. And we shall take away your goods and shall do you all the mischief and damage that we can as to vassals who do not obey and refuse to receive their lord and resist and contradict him. And we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault and not that of their highnesses or ours, nor of these cavaliers who come with us. End of quote. Taken from Exposing the Ice-Cold Deep Freeze Mentality and Whole Life Healing of Sexual Energy Within the Divine Parallel by High Priest Kwatamani, page 42, copyright 2005.
Have to begin to comprehend that a master or warlord thinks like by any means deemed necessary, and that becomes the platform of every operation. So we have been under an operation to divide, conquer, and separate our populations. And I don't just mean the ones that's divided, conquered, and separated based on black and white terms. I'm talking about crisscross every manner, because it's by any means deemed necessary to dominate, control, and rule. That's the warlord's nature. Sexual deviancy. This association with sexual realities, a misappropriation of sexual energies within and among man, he and she. The idea would be, do as thy will. Seeking pleasure would be the greatest goal and objective of any being ripped and torn apart from natural innate family communal order. And that is what's going on. And to get family communal order reestablished has to be the most important thing that man, he and she could do upon this planet, right here and right now. Yet, the master program has been so indoctrinated, so well encoded, that it actually feels like it is nearly impossible. And the different kinds of strategies that's used socially, economically, politically, religiously are all fine-tuned to maintain a divided, separated, conquered vibration within and among man, he and she.
To divide the family of man, he and she, a self-deified strategy to split the nucleus of the human race, scatter the family base, replace the earth solar conscious male, he who divinely guide and protect without fail, erased by the opposing nature of a he who is worshipped monotheistically.
So, when we think about the requientos which were issued in the Western Hemisphere, and the similarity in how each one of those operated, I cannot help but think about what happened. Why did they call this thing a paper bull? I used to try to reason with that. Then I started to see what was happening with the male bull, and I wondered did they correlate, and I said it really don't matter, because what really matters is this. I began to notice that the bull was tied to a chain. He was kept away from those heifers. He was used to breed new stock, and then he was brought back and shackled and chained. When I was thinking about the paper bulls, what flashed into the mind of the I as I was driving around with the family, I heard one of the sons say, "Look at that sign." It was a sign saying, "Bull for hire." And the I immediately went to the signs that used to be out saying, "Stud Negro for hire." I was thinking about those chattered populations, those enslaved populations, those who were sold on auction blocks, those who have a relationship with the I, so many of us on the planet. I began to realize that there was a similarity. That stud bull and that stud Negro was dealt with exactly the same way. And here's the catch. Here's the catch. Up until this very day, that stud bull is being put out for hire in the exact same way under the control of the bull keepers, the hunters and herders, the warring tribal clans. And in the exact same way, the Negro stud is being used. The only thing is, the stud bull somehow has maintained enough of something within his DNA that if you turn him loose, he gonna go get those heifers and go with them. You don't know where he going, but he going somewhere. Stud male, Negro per se, we'll call it for now, will stay put somehow, because the shackles and chain was moved from the feet and hands to put on the brain through mama. Within the domestic vibration, let's say domesticating, the male has been placed under the vibration of mama, who have been groomed and conditioned to uphold and maintain what has been brought to her. And if she was broken away from her family unit, as that paper bull said to do, as that Requiento said to do, if she was broken away in that manner, she would have nothing else in her conscious reasoning except to perpetuate what has been brought to her. And what has been brought to her is the upholding and maintaining the social, economic, political, religious order of the warlord. Even though she may have a consciousness within her, that consciousness has been tainted so badly that just like that stud bull, just like that stud Negro, they don't even know what reality is anymore. The only thing that happens is a functionality that keeps them locked in place. So when you hear the young man saying, "Ooh, priest, if you could see what I see," he's simply functioning based upon the master program. Now, don't get that wrong now. The feminine she has a natural and instinctual vibration in her that automatically draws the male's attention. But if it's not placed properly, nothing will occur except abuse. And on to the next journey, on to the next thrill and excitement. And when you've been ripped and torn apart from each other, that's all that's going to go on. And the only way that can ever be fixed is to go through massive, intense detoxing, purging, to heal into a holistic living consciousness where love and respect and dignity and humility and the order of maintaining the generation next, the family communal network, the social economic platform, and everything synchronized into a sacred garden cultural vibration of divine social economic family community order. And so as I pondered, I think of the young sister who was walking up the steps, And I feel pretty sure that she kind of knew what she was doing. She was twisting her little rump. I mean, she kind of knew. Or it could just been how she was walking up the steps. It's all been conditioned and programmed into her. She has to draw attention. How is she going to get those very necessary energies within her femininity satisfied? She needs to be loved. She needs to have communal attention. Remember, the whole communal order has been torn apart. Everybody is self-separated, divided, conquered, ruled by the nature of the I, me, my, mine syndrome. And inside, there's something else that's crying and calling to be given attention. And the male, too. But he has learned off of the warlord to reflect something like an apex male, the alpha male. And so he run around huffing and puffing and bluffing, having no respect for his ancestors, no respect for eldership, no respect for anything except the I, me, my, mine syndrome. And unless we can get that situation cleared away, and it ain't going to happen by no osmosis, it's going to take intense, continuous, ongoing work. And that has to be done by he, because he is the guiding and protective vibration. And if he don't deliver the goods will not be delivered. So she will continue to reflect the master warlord, the overlord's vibration into every generation thereafter. And if we can get that point of him giving divine guidance and protection, which is going to be a very difficult thing now, because remember, the female has been master programmed into a materialistic, physical kind of existence. And it's hard to cause that to change because she has become hungry for stuff and things. The reason is there's no other way that she has been given any sense of attention or satisfaction. So she just glut on stuff and things and feel like the more this, the more this, the more this, that it'll make someone feel like caring for her.
Conquest was the game, she would do the same. Since her womanhood was the prize, she started to monetize. Had her own conquest, she would test how tight to squeeze him, please him, and make him pay. Possess his energy through material gain. Revenge for emotional pain. Her nurturing affection for sale. Femininity turned cold and pale.
And she just goes older and older in that vibration. And at that particular point in time, ain't nothing else to do but worship your stuff and things. So where is the offspring that she's going to birth to become that guiding and protective male? We got to break this. We have to come to a consciousness within our own frame of reference. We have to step away from that status quo that is keeping our holistic living existence under the domination, control, and rule of a status quo nature that opposes our existence. Let's reason with that. We're talking about hunters and herders who actually master in the whole vibration of conflict, confusion, chaos, and war. And it is not a higher peace conscious cultural expression and how it keeps and deal with animals and etc. to serve his and her best interests, to feed that belly and other kinds of factors of economics. I was thinking about those chattered populations, those enslaved populations, those who were sold on auction blocks. That stud bull and that stud Negro was dealt with exactly the same way.
Systematic bondage tracked and traced. This is the truth brother must face. His original nature replaced, ancestral lines erased, but DNA based in codes are present still, placed under seal, protecting the integrity of ancestral masculine will. Femininity, she the key, stolen away from he. His joy, his treasure, his spiritual pleasure, as historically stated, his soulmate violated, he castrated to be eliminated as provider of divine guidance and protection, lost his spiritual connection.
Now, that's the way of life of those beings. that I'm speaking about a sacred garden cultural presentation. I'm speaking about offsprings born within a garden culture reality. I'm talking about those who emerged out of the first genesis of man, he and she. I'm talking about that sacred garden of eating raw and living fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, herbs, and spice. And I'm talking about the higher peace conscious nature that is encoded deep within the soul of the children of the sun. And I'm talking about how we are going to be able to reconnect with those precious elements within our consciousness, within those unseen places in our reasoning, within the soulful essence of who we be as children of the sun. When I think about a young stud male, aka a young stud Negro, and the fact that from birth, just as that stud bull, he went through a circumstance of having no reality connections with his ancestral existence, only as a stud to hump, to get up on it. Then I thought about those young men. I thought about the fact that many of them, without even knowing it, are born off of a stud or born off of a she who actually had had a studding experience with the male. And that it continues up until this very day. That there's nothing within the consciousness that's letting that male know, recognize, realize that, hey, you're functioning as you were groomed and conditioned and programmed to function by those paper bulls, by those recreantos, by those various factors that were put in place to keep you under the shackled and chained mindset of those who oppose your sacred ancestral existence. Not because of how much hatred that being may have for you, but because of their own will and intent to serve his and her own purpose, and that you happen to fit into the equation like an animal. And it's hard to reconcile that. In these times, we don't have any choice. We have to come to full recognition of the fact that there's something that has happened that has twisted and turned man, he and she, into opposition against each other as he and she, opposition to each other based on the platform of color context, hair texture, and these other kinds of things that actually interrupt and interfere with how we interface with each other sexually. Thinking about the fact of how much actual bitterness and hatred actually becomes manifested in someone of a certain complexion, because knowing that that one of that darker complexion, for example, was coming off of a studying energy and must have some kind of unique power to handle his business, when it ain't really got nothing to do with none of that. The reality is, what needs to occur is we need to bond and unify so that we can create a wholesome and healthy generation next. And that wholesome and healthy generation next is an absolute necessity at this point in time upon this earth, where these crises that we're facing are getting even more and more severe. And we cannot overlook the fact that Mama Nature is shifting and changing, and she's not joking. And the elements of earth, wind, rain, and sun must be honored. And the honoring of those elements means that we have to honor the breath that exists within us, the heat, the sun vibration. In other words, what I'm saying is we must honor the gift of life that we manifest as man, he, and she. And in that, look out for the generation next.
His masculine energy fell under a cold, pale spell. Not doing too well, refusing to use his ability to take full responsibility for correcting things instead of pointing the finger of blame. Dust upon of he and she broke, scattered all that deified nature to conquer the soul, gain possession and control. Its will being done to overthrow the soul of the earth, so the sun.